Hello, everybody, and good Monday morning. I am Angie Callen, your host of No More Mondays, the podcast where we believe you can have a thriving career or business and an amazing life on your terms. And it's my job to bring you guests who not only prove that, but have great advice to help you live and work more authentically. And if you know me or you've listened to this show at least once, you know there are two things I love more than just about everything else, and that is authenticity and living up to your potential. So when I came across David Young, host of a podcast called The Real You and owner of a company called Relentless and Attack Mindset, I knew we A, had to have a conversation, and B, that we were bound to be lifelong friends. For most of his adult life, David played it safe until an unexpected moment in his driveway changed everything, and he realized that all the words of encouragement he was giving his kid were things he needed to say to himself. So today, David has taken that story, spun it around, and is helping adults everywhere learn what it means to become the real you. And you're in for a real treat because we're digging into the deep stuff today. I hope you are ready to break out of the fear, shift your mindset, and change your life in ways that have nothing to do with algorithms and job titles. So David Young, let's do this. Welcome to No More Mondays.
Thanks, Angie. I'm not sure I can live up to that intro, but I will do my best. Thank you.
I have the need to. The times I hear that are often, and so I will take it as a compliment. I think it is my resume writing background that just has to, we just go right in there from the
Yeah,
beginning.
hit the high notes right from the get-go. Love it.
But do not limit yourself, Mr. Fearless. And I want to go back a step because I mentioned in the intro this driveway moment that was quite literally seems like it was an aha to you. I want to hear a little bit more about it and why it hit so hard.
Yeah, so I have two boys, and at the time, my oldest son was 13, and he's a lot like me, just kind of small for his age, skinny, late developer, good athlete. And for years, I'd been trying to get him. He's a basketball player, which I was too. We played lots of sports, but that was always our best sport. So there was a lot of similarities in kind of where he was at in life and kind of what I went through his kind of age and growing up. So I felt like I was a good I had a lot of insight as to what he was going through, and I kept trying to give him advice through the last several seasons of basketball and like trying to be more aggressive on the court and have more confidence. And like the way that he plays with me in the driveway or the local community center is totally different than the way he plays like with his teams. And I couldn't figure out a way to get him to understand that those are really the same. Like you have to have the same level of confidence when no one's watching than when everyone's watching, right? So I tried all these things for years. And we were driving home from a particularly bad game that he had played. And again, I was just trying to figure it out. And he finally admitted, he said something to the effect of like, I don't know what I'm so afraid of, which is the first time that he had ever admitted any type of fear. So I was like, okay, I'm close to a breakthrough. Like the first step, right? We have to admit there's a problem before we can solve it. So I continued using that. And we tried to just pick like one aspect of basketball, just one part of the game that he would try. And so the next game he did it, or he said he was going to do it and he didn't. And then that happened for a couple more weeks. So I was like, okay, well, you admitted there was a problem, but you're not doing anything to fix it. And so again, we kept going. So at the time he was playing flag football also, and it did not affect flag football. So when he played flag football, he had all this confidence, no fear whatsoever. So I tried to walk him through this. There's a lot of similarities, right? They're both 5-on-5. They're both, one's played on a field, one played on a court, but it's the size is the same, and you're running and you're being aggressive. Like there's a lot of similarities. So I was trying to walk him through, like you can do it in flag football, so there's no reason you can't do it in basketball, right? And we were going back and forth, and I don't know what happened. Like the skies parted, the light hit me the right way, and I just had this moment where I realized that everything I was saying to him the last probably 3 full years was directly applicable to my entire career, which at that point was like 20 years of frustration. And I knew I had to do something different. Like I had tried career coaches and therapists, and I'd read like 70 self-help books. Like I tried all the traditional stuff, and they all helped to a certain point, but nothing really made a huge impact. And so in that moment, I was like, oh, like I have to take my own advice. Like I have to stop just telling him that, and I actually have to do something for myself. Otherwise, I'm just being a hypocrite.
So what was it that was holding you back? So if we reflect this onto you, I find it so interesting that you had, I don't want to say attempted to do the work, but you had gone through all of the, let's say, mainstream or normal or known methodologies for trying to fix the thing.
Yeah.
But it kind of took almost introspection via the lens of your kid in order to realize it. So what was it that struck you? What was the piece that had been missing in the previous work?
Well, I think in the message to him, which I realized was to me, and talking to him about being like more aggressive and more assertive, is I thought by hiring a career coach or taking another career personality test, I went back to school and got a second degree. I always thought that those external hirings or books or whatever I was doing outside, like those were going to do it. Like that coach was going to fix it, or that test was going to tell me what I should do next, or that book was going to give me the insight I was lacking. I didn't realize, or maybe I did, but I didn't do enough work. Like those are just tools. Those are helpful guides and tools, but I still had to do it. Like no coach was going to give me the answer. No book. There's no book that's going to tell me like, oh, you should just do this. Like I have to take that information, but I have to apply it. Like I wasn't being assertive and aggressive in my career. I kept waiting for one of those external changes or some boss to recognize my potential or a new company or a new industry. I always thought these external changes or whatever, like one of those would be it, right? But I had been doing that for, again, close to 20 years and nothing had really changed. So I was like, oh, well, I can't keep doing that same thing, or I'm just going to keep kicking the can down the road for another 20 years and then I'll retire and then soon I'll be dead. So this is not a great, it's not a great future. So I had to do something for me that like I was in charge of. And for some reason that became content creation on LinkedIn. I still don't really know why that was it. Maybe it was because the only social media account that I even had, because I didn't have Facebook or Instagram or any of that. So LinkedIn, I at least had a profile. So that's what ended up happening, and here we are.
Yeah, the sometimes the mechanism is less important than the means that I think that provides. And I think the piece that I really want to point out there is it feels to me, or it sounds to me like you decided to take agency over things that you have control. And I love this very real world example of something that I've probably said on here a bunch, and in general I think is very true, that we don't take control of our careers or our lives as much as we have the ability to, because we lean into other people or external factors. And so I'm curious, if we go really vulnerable, what was that kind of safety net or that like lack of agency costing you?
Well, I mean, when it got to the real, so I started my career in sales. So I had a territory and I was doing a bunch of driving. So that was okay. I wasn't great at it, or I should say I wasn't really that good at it, but I wasn't bad enough to quit or get fired. I was actually told by a career coach it would have been better off if I was just terrible, because I would have either quit and gotten fired and I would have gotten it out of the way. Instead, I did it for 7 years. So he was like, you were like just good enough, which was actually a terrible place to be. Anyway, so I ended up going to an office job. I'd never worked in an office until I was like 30 years old. So I did that for a while, but I finally got to like my third office job, and that's when it started to get really bad because I was just miserable. I was approaching 40 at that point, and here I have 2 degrees, and I feel like I'm pretty capable and smart enough, and like I'm just stuck in this job where I'm just sitting in this cubicle, and it just felt like a prison. I've talked about this on LinkedIn. Like I really felt like it was a prison because like I had to show up at 9. They wouldn't let me leave until 5. I got a 30-minute break for lunch. I couldn't go longer. When I left at 5, I had to come back the next day. And then on Fridays, they gave me like a 60-hour work release, but I had to come back on Monday. Like it was truly a prison. Like I had to show up, right? If I don't show up, then I lose my job. So the building felt like a prison. Like my desk felt like my cell. So it got really bad. Like it was very like I had a lot of depression, and I felt like a failure because it should have been easier to crack the code on like work I should be doing that I didn't despise, and I hadn't. So I just felt like a failure in life too. Even though my personal life, I was married and had kids, and like that was going pretty well, but it had this overwhelming like, well, I'm just completely failing at everything. So yeah, they were really pretty dark from probably like 2014, 2015 through like 2017, 18. Like those 4 or so years were, yeah, they were bad.
I think we often discount how significant career satisfaction or lack thereof is to our overall well-being,
Mhm.
because we do it just as much, if not more, than anything else in life, including sleep. And it is a relationship just like our romantic ones and our partnership ones, usually involving more complexity and more people. And so it really can take its toll. And so this is one of those outside everything looked great, but inside is a big old mess because there was somebody called that a career tumbleweed one day to me. And I was like, that is such a perfect way to put it, that I just kind of like kept, do we say failing forward or just kind of kept going to the next thing in this idea of finding external validation in seeking something that was actually inside the whole time. You just kind of had to tap into it and give yourself permission. So I'm curious, what would 2016 David say to 2025 David?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it to myself at that time. I'd say it to anyone is just putting yourself out there. Like whatever it is you're thinking about doing, like you're like, I want to do this or I want to try this. It doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like a career or a business. That's what it kind of ended up being for me. But it might just be a side project or a hobby. Maybe you want to get on stage and speak. Like I'd always wanted to do stand-up comedy. I ended up doing it last fall for 6 minutes. Like things like that. Like again, it's not a career thing, but it's just like, hey, this would be cool to try. But so oftentimes we like limit ourselves and we get in our heads and we're like, nah, or I'll put it off, and then 10 years goes by. I would just say to anyone, but specifically to myself, is just take chances. Like just see it.
Mhm.
Like you won't really ever know. Like even if it seems really good, and you're like, oh, I'd be great at that. Well, you don't really know. Like just try it, like on a smaller scale, and then try to expand it from there. Um, I thought I could think my way there. Like if I thought enough about it, if I analyzed it in enough spreadsheets, if I read enough books, listened to enough podcasts, took enough notes, like eventually it would crystallize. And all that does is lead to more thinking and analyzing. Like, you can actually do that forever and you'll never actually do anything. So I would just say take action. I know it sounds cliched and very simple, but just small action towards whatever it is that you're thinking about. And then maybe it's not what you thought. You'd be like, you know what? I didn't really enjoy that. That wasn't great.
Mhm.
That's good too. Like, then you can cross that off. Or it wasn't quite what you thought. So you pivot a little bit. Like it's always the action that it'll give you so much more insight than like any book or talking to someone who's done it. Like that's helpful. And I'm not saying not to do that, but until you actually do it and put yourself in it, that's where you're going to learn the most.
Yeah, I love that you said I thought I could think my way out of it. And that led
Yeah.
to analysis paralysis that was only resolved by doing. Both of them complement each other very well, but we as a society fear failure so badly and so significantly that it keeps us from the doing part. And so we just kind of stay in mediocrity it's kind of how I look at it. We stay small, we stay in mediocre because we fear the thing we think we want not working. But you said this, the phrase that I think is so true. You can always go back and you will never know. Isn't it better to have tried and failed but not regret than
Yeah.
to 20 years from now going, man, I should have left that friggin' office job? And you never ever ever know. So
Yeah.
you don't really fail, you learn. And that's exactly what happens in this doing. And in the doing, the mindset piece really starts to shift, which is kind of this next thing I want to dig into a little bit, because that's that idea of like we is seeking external validation when really you needed to look inward. So talk to me a little bit more about how the mindset started to shift and how that fear kind of started to transition into relentlessness as you started doing.
Yeah, and I mean, the name of the company, the Relentless and Attack Mindset, came because that's exactly what I was telling my son. I was like, you have to be relentless on the basketball court. Like when you're between the lines, when the game is going on, like anytime that you're playing, you have to play with this relentless effort on both ends of the court. So I had been saying that to him, and then in that, it was like you have to look to attack. Like in basketball, right? It's not passive. You can't just pass the ball around and wait for defense to just get out of your way. Like you have to move and cut and screen, dribble and drive. Like it's all based on attacking. So that's kind of where the name came from. For me, once I started to create content, and I was actually working with my third career coach at the time, he laughed at me, not like at me, but like laughed when I told him after this had happened in the driveway. I had a call with him shortly a couple days later, and I said, "Hey, I kind of had this thing happen, and the result is I'm going to start creating content on LinkedIn." It's like he was like, that's so far out of the norm for you. He was like, that's not even like on the radar. He was like, I can't even believe you're even thinking about doing it, let alone going to do it. I was like, no, no, no. I was like, I have to. I was like, I have all these stories. Like I have all these career stories and sports stories. And like, I have all this information. Like I'm a storyteller naturally. Like I have to do it. He was like, right. But you're like an introvert. You don't want people to look at you. You don't put your picture anywhere. You don't even have a Facebook account. I was like, I know. That's why I have to do it. Like it's perfect. And he was like, all right. So he was just like really skeptical. But one of the things he said was, which is kind of what you're
Sidebar
saying.
conversation that's not recorded about your choice in career coaches, but please continue.
Well, it it's similar to what you said with the whole like failing and knowing versus just wondering. That's what he said. He was like, well, the good part is like if you create content and it goes nowhere, like if no one sees it or you're not any good at it or whatever, like you have nothing to lose. Well, a little bit of embarrassment, I guess. Your ego takes a little bit of a hit, but like you still have your job because I was still working at the time. You'll still have your job. Like you can still continue with this like career work we were doing because we were trying to figure out like my next step. So I was like, I don't know, there was just something inside like once, and again, I can't really specifically tell you why creating content on LinkedIn was it, but once I settled on that idea, I never left it. Like it took me about a month to like prep and do it, and then I did it, and then once I started, I never stopped. So I really bought into that because I thought there was something there, and I didn't really think of myself as a creative person until I started creating, and then I was like, oh, I have so much to say. Like I have like content creation is easy for me. Like I could write content all day long. I could post 5 times a day, 7 days a week. I'd never run out of things to say. Like when people are like, I don't know what to write about, it's so foreign to me because I'm like, oh, I'm limited. Like posting once a day is like, oh, I have to talk about this today, but I really want to talk about like 6 other things. So once I started, it was like this faucet got turned on that I haven't, turned off yet. So, and then which really kind of feeds the whole, like once you start doing something, then you're like, oh, like, yeah, this is good. Like I'm on the right track. Like I figured something out, which was only because I pressed post for the first time without ever doing anything, like that. So that's where like the mindset of trying, and then once I tried, figuring it out, and then here we are. It'll be 2 years this summer.
Yay! Also love that you got to check off the bucket list 6 minutes of comedy, by the way.
Yeah, that
But
was a
here
lot of
comes
fun.
a broken record Angie moment is step out of the comfort zone and you will end up landing exactly where you're supposed to be. It's really incredible how something as seemingly benign as, okay, I'm going to push myself to get out there and create this content unraveled into this, the purpose, right? I think a lot of times the purpose finds us instead of us necessarily finding it, but you have to kind of try some things to figure it out. You said something I wanted to touch on because earlier on when you were talking about the conversation with the kiddo struggling between different formats of play, you mentioned that you said to him, you have to have the same level of confidence when no one's watching as when people are watching. How does that tie into this mindset and confidence piece? How do those two interact as you kind of do start to step out and do uncomfortable things and grow?
Yeah, I think we get fooled a little bit by. I tell them this a lot, even now. I'm like, you have to practice the way that you play because, especially as a kid, maybe it's a little different as an adult when you have a little bit more frame of reference and cognitive maturity. But you have to believe what you're doing while you're practicing and doing it so that it shows up when you need it. So you can't just go through the motions. That's what I tell him all the time. Like, you can't go through the motions. Like even he does some like training. It's not official. It's not like a team. It's just like individual training with a group. I'm like, you have to go through those drills, and some of those drills are very basic for him. Like he's almost 16 now, and he has a lot of skill, but they're very basic drills. I'm like, you have to go through that drill as hard as you can. Like I know that sounds nuts because you're like, well, that's so easy for me. I was like, but you have to train your brain and your body to go that hard when there's someone guarding you who's better than you, right? So if you go through the motions when it's easy, there's no way you can up level and be like, oh, well now I have to try 8 times harder because this kid's really good. I'm like, you go that hard all the time, then going that hard against a better defender is natural. So it's the same principle. Like no matter what you're doing, like you have to go through it. Like when I was rehearsing for the stand up, I mean, when I practiced that a lot. Like I had a microphone in my hand and I was standing on like the landing like of my stairs so that I would be elevated a little bit because I had no real way to mimic like a stage. And I'd never really, I mean, I've been on stages, but not like that. So that was the way that I practiced it because when I took the stage at the comedy club, like I knew I was going to have a mic and be standing. So like that was a way to practice it in a way that was similar to the way I was going to do it. And I timed it. Like I knew exactly what to say to hit the 6 minutes, like all that kind of stuff. So the way that you prepare and practice, like mentally and physically, will carry over. So if you're just like half-assing it, or you're like, oh, I'll just do it this way now, but when it really matters, like I'll try. like I think it's really hard to do unless you're just a really like advanced or it's something you've done like a lot where you're like, okay, I'm that good, I can just turn it on. Then you can do it. But most of the things you're trying are newer, so that's not really the
Mhm.
case. So you have to really have that mindset of I'm going to attack this in my practice so that when I have to do it for real, like it's a lot easier and I have a lot more confidence.
It takes 10,000 hours to get to outlier status, which is when it's all just,
Yeah,
second nature. And until you get to that point, the word conditioning applies outside of the gym.
yeah,
And so we have to condition ourselves, whether it is from a confidence or a step out of your comfort zone kind of thing, or whether it's in a skill. But I find that when you do that, and like what's that book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things
yeah.
get easier, right? The first couple times, how much easier is content creation now than the first time you had to click post, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Um, and I guess I'm curious what's like kind of surprised you in this journey. So, who are you becoming now that you have this kind of more authentic, real you, and what have been some of the surprising moments along the way?
I mean, the vast diversity of people that I've met was surprising. It's kind of one of those where like we live when you just show up, you live in your town, you drive to your office, you go to work and you come home, right? The people that you interact with is so small, right? Your coworkers, your partner, your neighbors, you have friends that live in the area, whatever, like it's a microscopic fraction of what's out there, right? So after not really spending any time online, because I didn't do Facebook and all that type of stuff, it was so eye-opening because I've met people. I think I've had calls. I think I'm up to like 16 or 17 different countries now. And I've lost track of the number of Zoom calls in total, but like just meeting all these people from all over the world who are also, smart and driven and creative and energetic and trying to build something, but it also had like similar struggles in life too. Like it was really eye opening. Obviously the world is smaller than we think because of the internet, but seeing this just like these diverse people that I've met and some that I've met several times and have a relationship with was really like I would not have predicted that when I got started that would have happened. And that's just the power of putting yourself out there and building relationships and being consistent and commenting and getting in DMs and having Zoom calls with people with no agenda. Like you're not selling anything. You're not, it's nothing like that. You're just literally trying to get to know them and their background and that type of stuff. That was really beneficial for me. I think the biggest thing I've learned is that now that I've done this, like I feel like I can do anything. Like before, I almost flipped it, right? Like before, I was scared to try almost anything. It's like, ooh, I don't know. Now that I've done this and it's kind of gone the way that it's gone in a relatively short period of time, now I don't think there's anything other than maybe handling like a snake. I don't think I would do that. Um, and I rode that ski lift over last week, and that was terrifying. I wouldn't do that again. So we'll scratch those two things. There's probably a couple more if I thought about it, but other than those two and plus the others, like I think I would try like almost anything. Like if you said to me like tomorrow I have to get in front of like 20,000 people and like where the Pacers play, like I would do it. Like I'd be nervous and I wouldn't have a lot of time to prep, but like I'd be like, all right, I'll get out there and say I'll figure something out. How long you need me to talk? Whereas like before, it would have been like, oh, there's no way, like, forget it. Like
Oh,
I need like 2 months, and I need to practice like 1,000 times, and I need to record it and video it and like all this stuff, and then I probably would figure out a way to get out of it. Whereas now I'd be like, oh yeah, fine, sure, I'll do it.
it kind of almost becomes a little bit of in a healthy way, an addiction, right? Like
Yeah,
once you can rip the Band-Aid off and realize that you can do hard things and you can learn new things and you can fail without the biggest catastrophe you make up in your mind becoming the reality,
yeah,
you then are like, okay, well now I'm like, I don't say invincible because mine is this squirrel suit, would never ever in a million years jump out of a plane in one of those freaking squirrel suits. No. That's my snake. But in general, when it comes to like either business or intellectual things, you start to kind of almost crave. It's again, to go back to the gym and the sports analogy, you started conditioning yourself, and when you start conditioning yourself, your muscles want to continue to be conditioned, and so now you're exercising another muscle. I've experienced that in my in the last several years. I have started doing a whole bunch of new outdoor activities. I mean, I already did all of the mountain granola outdoor activities, but it was like, okay, I've snowboarded for 20 years. That's not enough. Let's learn to ski at 41 and mountain bike at 43. And it's amazing what you can, what you can do. And then how confident it builds, the confidence it builds in other parts of life. So I love this so much. So let's stop talking about how wonderful we are and how we've overcome the fear barrier and start encouraging others out there to do it. So there's at least one person out there going, oh crap, I'm a career tumbleweed. I'm miserable. I'm playing it safe. What can the oh crap person do to start changing the mindset or just even taking those small steps you mentioned?
Yeah, I think, yeah, first of all, you have to figure out like what you're good at. So if you haven't done any type of assessment or you don't know like what are you naturally good at, you have to figure that out, right? And I've done exercises where I've asked people close to me, like coworkers and friends, like, what are the 3 things you think I'm the best at, or whatever. There's lots of different ways to do it. So first of all, you have to figure out like, what am I actually good at? 2, you have to figure out what are you interested in, because you might be good at it, but you might not actually like it that much, and so then that doesn't work. So you need to know what you're good at and what you're interested in. Once you get those 2 kind of narrowed in, and they don't have to be like one thing; it could be several. Then you have to figure out, okay, from a work perspective, like what work can I do that covers my interest and that I'm good at, right? And it might be a lot of things. It might only be a couple. It doesn't matter. But that's kind of how you have to start. And then that's where the experimentation comes in. So then you want to try to volunteer, whether you're in your current role, maybe you can volunteer for a project that hits those, or whatever. You're just trying to figure out, like, try to do some work. Maybe it's on your own. Like maybe you just you go to YouTube or GPT or something and search up or make up a project, or what it does. Like there's so many different ways now to do it. And then while you're doing the work, ask yourself, like, would I want to do this? Would I want to get paid to do this? Do I like doing this? Does time go by quickly when I do this? Do I dread this? Right? You're trying to audit like the whole thing, because the ultimate goal is interest, good, and what you can get paid for, right? If you can check those 3 boxes, then you've kind of figured it out from a career perspective. What you can't do though is to do all of that and not do anything. Like you can do that work and then just, again, continue to think about it, or you can peruse job boards and maybe occasionally apply for a job or whatever. Like that's not going to do it. Like that won't do it. And the job might not be it, because as we all know, the jobs from the outside are way different than the jobs on the inside. So it could look great on paper, it could look great in the interview process. Then you get in and you're like, oh, this isn't really what I thought. Then your boss gets transferred or goes to another company or something, and now you're stuck, and that's a whole different thing. So yeah, it's really trying to figure out like what you're good at and what you actually like to do. Because I mean, I'm 49. I never thought about that. Like when I got my degree, I got a degree in biology because I thought it would make me sound smart. That was the only reason that I got it. That's a terrible reason to get a degree. I mean, I was good at math and science, so like it kind of made sense, but it was like, what am I going to do with a biology degree? Like I wasn't going to go to med school. I didn't want to be a pharmacist. Like it made no sense. But I was like, well, it'll look good on a resume. Like, because everybody was majoring in, communications or just general business or finance. So I was like, all right, well, I don't want to do that because I'll just look like everybody else. So I'll do biology. Nobody's doing biology. And then I ended up working. My first job was selling pharmaceuticals for Roche because I played golf with a guy that told me if I got a pharma job, I get to play a lot of golf. It's like, all right, that sounds good. Like my reasoning for doing it was terrible. It made no sense, but what I did. So like, have a little more thought.
That was something you were interested in, right?
Yeah, golf. But I'm gonna have to drive 50,000 miles a year and get my PDA signed 8 times a day to do it. So yeah.
You choosing biology sounds eerily familiar to me becoming a civil engineer, because my dad was my high school math teacher who said, and you're good at math and science, maybe you should be an engineer. Okay, I'll choose civil engineering because it's the one that I get to talk to people the most. Yep. Barking up the wrong tree. If humans are my interest, engineering was probably not the right discipline. And so I feel like visually, this is like ikigai with an action item at the end, because you can fill out those little ikigai forms all you want, but it's only so good until you apply it to something. Which, to go back, I'll say that I think all of that external work that you did with coaching and reading books created a foundation to then work through what to go do for you. Yeah. So it all kind of came together as you applied the agency, but that was the thing that got you over the hump, was the actual application of it.
Yeah, it wasn't a waste. I don't want to knock the books and the coaching. Like I learned something from all the people that I worked with and most of the books and stuff. And I took notes and I listened to podcasts and stuff. So yeah, it definitely added like you said, to the base, to the foundation. It gave me knowledge, but I did it for way too long because I kept thinking that one of those was going to eventually like push me over the edge and like do it for me instead of like I'm acquiring this knowledge, but I really have to apply and actually go try something. Like that's what I needed to do and learn like much earlier. But also, again, with my age and like when I grew up, like starting a business was foreign to me. Like
Yep.
even like I didn't think of it. I thought I always had to work, like in terms of like a 9 to 5. Like I just
Mhm.
thought I had needed like a W-2 job because it was so societally, I was so societally programmed to do it. That's all I saw growing up. And like, oh, well, so all my thought was like, well, this all has to lead to just another job. Like that was always the focus of like everything. And then all of a sudden when I took this journey, then it was like really eye-opening. It was like, oh,
Mhm.
I could just work for myself. Like that's way better because I never liked having a boss. I never needed a boss. I had all this internal and external motivation. So I never needed anyone to like ask me what I was doing or like motivate me. Like I had all that in spades. So like now I don't have to worry about that. It's just such a better fit.
I always say they never taught entrepreneurship in Podunkville, Pennsylvania. They don't teach it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if now it's taught as much, but it has become such a more accepted and viable career track. Because
Yeah.
I felt the same, I teacher's house, I grew up in a teacher's house. My dad worked for the same school. My grandfather worked for the same company for 30 years. It was societal and generationally still
Mhm.
expected in the late 90s, early 2000s that you were going to go do the same job. Maybe you would change employers once.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Correct.
And then I think the recession, along with millennials coming in and technology, really just started to change those possibilities. And, for those of you out there that don't aspire to entrepreneurship, there are other ways to be, you can be satisfied in your work if you study and take the chance to find the right ecosystem and the
Mhm.
right kind of application. But you've got to get out there and figure out what it is. You don't have to accept your present circumstances as the only reality that you can have. And that's the big message that I think we have in this, like, relentlessness and be the real you.
Yeah.
um so I'm curious, I guess, in this new foundation that you have, how do you keep yourself from slipping back into safeville?
Um, my wife does that for me, so I don't have to do it. Uh, she's she's still that steady paycheck would be really nice. This like fluctuating like monthly revenue is like it's not great. Wouldn't it be so nice just to have that paycheck? So I let her do that. I don't think that I won't say I'll never go back. I mean, I can't predict the future, but I think it would take a very unique set of circumstances for me to consider doing it because now I mean I quit February of 24, so I'm about month 14 of not working for a company. And the farther I get away from it, then like the more it feels like I wouldn't want to do that again. So again, never say never, but um, I don't I didn't fit in. When I look back at the companies, like I was the outlier. Like I thought it all was weird. Like I thought having a manager was weird. I thought manager one-to-ones were weird. I thought end of year performance reviews were one of the great wastes of time, like in civilization. They were so dumb. I mean, like what a waste of time. And the all hands company meetings, like what are we doing with those? Like how many catchphrases can we cram into 45 minutes? Like I just thought this is such a waste. But I was the outlier. Like I was one of the few that thought that everybody loved them. Like they thought it was great. They thought having a one-on-one with their manager every week was great. I thought it was stupid. So as I look back on it, it was like I was the one that didn't fit. Like I shouldn't have been there. So
Yeah.
now I don't think that.
Well, and it takes a lot to admit that about yourself, of like,
Yeah.
it's not them, it's me.
Yeah.
That goes back to, 101 with the kiddo in the driveway. Got to admit there's a problem first.
Right.
Uh and then you can attack it. And I'll tell you yes, entrepreneurship also becomes an addiction. I'll tell you, the longer that you're in it, and having a supportive spouse is another show I could record, because I think that that's huge. And it's funny, my husband about 4 or 5 days ago asked me the question of, and he has never, 7 years, 7.5 years, and we have never had the conversation of, what would it take for you to go back to the corporate world? And I basically rattled through a bunch of requirements that essentially render it never going to happen. It was like, pay me $1 million a year, fully remote, at least 4 weeks of vacation. I was like, it's never ever going to happen. So there you go, corporate America. That's what you need to get Angie on your team. So speaking
That's
of
funny.
teams, how do we find you, the content work you're doing, the podcast? How can people kind of follow along with both your resources and your journey?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the place where I'm live the most. That's just I have a common name, David Young. So if you just throw MBA behind it, I'm the first one that shows up. If you just search David Young, I've never done that, but I'm guessing there's a whole bunch of us. I do have a website, davidjyoung.me. I don't promote that a lot. I don't send people there, but it does exist. It does live. But LinkedIn's the best place to find me. And then the podcast, you can find it. It's a little hard to find because it's still relatively new. It's about a year old. It's called The Real You. I stole that from The Who's The Real Me, which I would have named it, but I figured they probably wouldn't like that. And they wouldn't like if I used John Entwistle's bass line. So I don't have any
Don't get
music
fooled
and I call
again.
it The Real You. What's that?
Don't get fooled again.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want Roger or Pete coming after me. But that's kind of the idea was, and what we've talked about, right? Like I wore a lot of masks and I felt like I was a different person. Like my parents are divorced, so like different sides of the family, I was different. And then obviously I was different at work with my friends, with my wife. Like I was like a different person in all these different phases. So the real you is really like A and O to the who, but it's like really trying to be the truest version of yourself. And I think as we get older and we mature and we don't care quite as much about like what people think and we're not trying to impress people and like all the social stuff kind of goes away a little bit. I feel like we kind of move towards closer to like who we are, and then we can kind of be ourselves, and we can be more of ourselves in more situations. And that was kind of the idea.
And I love I also love the Who. I'm a huge classic rock fan, and classic rock, just so you all know, was not made in the 90s, people. Heard Pearl Jam on a classic rock station the other day and about had a coronary. I love the inspiration for it, both from the musical background, but also this idea of you shouldn't have to be someone different at work, at home, and with your friends. You should be able to integrate all of that. And you have permission and you owe it to yourself and your short life on this planet to figure out how to integrate all of that stuff for a more fulfilling, but also kind of more energizing existence.
Yeah.
Because I bet you, David, if we looked at energy wise, you have to have so much more energy for things now and like zeal than when everything was completely zapping it because everything was fighting against each other.
Oh, 100%. There's a book called Designing Your Life. I read that like 2017, and one of the things in that book they had you do with your current job was an energy audit, and I did it pretty thoroughly as the way they described it, and it was like 98% draining and 2% giving. So
That is no way to
yeah.
live. Also, that book is back there somewhere. That's what I was looking for. And so I think this is I think you probably have a bookshelf that looks like this. And I bet you half of what you read is on this shelf.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great time to just give one little last piece of encouragement to somebody out there who's stuck, who is where you were 5 years ago. What is that little message that you kind of want to leave everyone with today?
I would say just pick something that you've always been thinking about, that you've in the back of your mind or in your soul or wherever it lives, and you're like, I would really like to do X. Whatever it is, does not have to be career. Could be fun, could be serious. Doesn't matter. You're just like somewhere inside of you. You're like, I want to write a poem. I want to take this class. I want to learn an instrument. I want to travel somewhere. I want to bake cookies. It truly does not matter. But there's something that you've never tried that you're like, I would like to do that. I think I would be good at that, or I think I would enjoy that, or I would like to see if I'm good at that. It doesn't matter. Whatever that one little thing is, just do it. Like register for the class, buy the ingredients, sign up, book a ticket. It doesn't matter. Just do it. Just do it. Don't wait. Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it. There's another trademark, but we're going to use it anyway. It's the best summary of this whole episode, David. I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and telling a story that more people than we think need to hear. Because what I want to tell all of you out there is you do not have to be reckless or even fearless as you're going to explore what's going to make you more fulfilled. You just need to take one intentional step in a direction and then keep going. So my challenge to you this week is, what is one thing you can do to overcome an area of your life where fear is holding you back? What would it look like to just take one intentional and relentless step forward this week? I'm Angie Callen, and this has been another amazing episode of No More Mondays. I look forward to seeing you all next week for more inspirations, insights, and amazing conversations to help you live and work authentically.